Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We are meeting tonight. I'm the acting chair. We are meeting tonight to discuss the MTA's bus network redesign for Community Board 10. We saw a presentation in December, and I want to thank Dan Heddix. He watched the presentation and he put together a map that showed here are our bus lines. And with a legend, this stays the same, this changes, this goes away, this moves. And it was very helpful. So I want to thank you again for that. And even
You're welcome.
As helpful it is, it's still overwhelming.
How do you think it felt to make it?
I'm sure it did. And Doris, I just want to add that, typically, we always invite the MTA to come. And usually, when the initial, when it was in the works, the MTA bus redesign, the MTA did come to our meeting. They are moving in a different direction, holding public workshops, for community briefing, which will take place on February 9th. But being that there was so many changes and a lot to look at, and our board, as we do all things, we like to prepare an advisory opinion that's very thoughtful and reviewed, and that couldn't possibly be done by attending a general public workshop in February. So our chair, Jane Kapitanakis, thought it was a good idea if the Traffic and Transportation Committee begins its review in advance of the February 9th meeting. And for February, have all of our members attend that February 9th workshop with a preview. And Dan really put a great piece together, which he's going to lead us through on the Bay Ridge end. And I put together with our college aide today, the Dyker Heights portion. I'm not going to compare it to Dan's presentation. I don't have his mapping skills, but we'll start with Bay Ridge and take a look at some of the changes and take it from there. Dan, you want to share? I enabled you to share. If you
If you want, I could run through the page. Doris, it's up to you. I could run through my actual article, but I think it might be easier just to show off the larger map.
Yes.
And I can just highlight a couple of things that are good to know about what has been removed and what has been kept. So let me just do a quick share screen here. So this is the map that I have assembled of all of the changes, and we can kind of go one by one through some of these. And obviously, let's start. I can actually start filtering out some of these. So let's start with the B1. And just go down in order. I'll cover some of the things that I've noticed on the Bay Ridge end. B1, easiest one. In Bay Ridge, no changes. It's still going down 86th Street. It loops around at the R train and heads back. There are some Dyker changes, which I'm sure that Josephine will get into. Dahlgren Place southbound has been eliminated. There was never really a northbound stop. That was back over by 7th Avenue, so it was kind of a little isolated. So it's interesting that that was there in the first place, but it is removed. It does create a pretty big gap. And this is where I think we should start talking about very quickly some of the different eliminations that the MTA has done. They're in a couple of different styles. One is almost all of Bay Ridge and Dyker Heights CB10 are what they call local lines. Normally, the average distance between those lines is around 800 feet or so in existing. Again, based on the trolley lines. A lot of these lines are based on the trolley conversions from the 1940s, and they have not changed since. So it's interesting that there really aren't. Larry, yeah, there are a couple of alterations. They moved stops around especially, and there's some additions. But
as a trolley line, the B1 would turn up 5th Avenue, then would turn on Bay Ridge Avenue, and then turn up 3rd Avenue, and it would loop around at 65th Street.
It was,
when it was converted to bus, it originally went all the way down to Shore Road, and then it came back. Then it was cut back to 4th Avenue.
And that's an interesting thing is we haven't seen really a rerouting that brings back a Bay Ridge loop which existed in trolley form and in bus form for a long time, but we really haven't had a true Bay Ridge loop. It always heads out of Bay Ridge. So it was interesting that that wasn't added. I think it is important to start out by saying that there were on the Brooklyn redesign priority corridors that the MTA was looking at for disadvantaged communities that have not had good public transportation access. Bay Ridge was not one of those priority corridors, and for good reason. There were other areas that needed it far more. But you know, we're CB10. Let's look at what CB10 has to offer. So you'll see that there are some cuts. The first kind of cut was to kind of increase the spacing, the gaps between stops. And that can be contentious. It means people have to walk further for a stop. They were aiming it from 800 feet on average to around 1,000 to 1,350 feet on average. The goal is to have the buses stop at stops less so they can move faster, and the speed is increased for the overall line. That doesn't necessarily mean that the bus runs more frequently. It just means that it goes faster. So that is on the B1. You'll also notice on the B1 there are some moves where a bus stop is like kind of moved across the street. These are called near side versus far side. Usually there's a lot of literature about whether it's more effective for a bus to stop before a red light or after a red light. Generally, you want them to stop after a red light because one, the bus doesn't have to merge into oncoming traffic from a standstill through a green light that just turned green. Usually they don't get to merge and it slows it down. Also, there's new technology for giving the bus priority at a traffic signal. If it stopped before the red light, that priority signalization doesn't get to work because the technology doesn't know if the bus has stopped the loaded passengers or it's actually waiting for the red light. So it doesn't really work well. So you want it to happen after. And there's a safety issue when a bus is stopped at a corner, picking up passengers right before a red light. If anyone's trying to get around it and it's green and it makes a right turn, that turn is happening with the bus blocking a view of the crosswalk. So there are injuries that can happen for pedestrians that are just walking by if a bus is blocking that right in front of a red light. So you want to try to move them across the street. There are some issues with Diker where they actually, interestingly, moved them to the other side. And I'm not sure why they did that. Those are some open questions. They should be after. I don't know why they moved them before, other than maybe to reach a certain statistical average of spacing or something like that. And they really needed the extra 50 feet or something like that. So B1 is mostly intact. There's the B4, which has another kind of elimination, which is what I call corner stops, where a bus will immediately make a stop the second it makes an unexpected turn.
That's my stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's my front door. Now I'm not gonna have a bus stop in my front door.
Yeah. And these are absurd sometimes. They are extremely close to other stops. And the only answer that I have for why these were ever put there in the first place is that some people riding a bus might not have expected the bus to make a turn. So the stop right after the turn is afforded to passengers who can quickly request the stop and get off because they didn't expect it to say make a turn south or something like that. So they could quickly jump off and go where they needed to go. But with new digital signage and everyone having a phone and a lot better wayfinding, that's much less of an issue. So I feel like the MTA is taking the opportunity to axe a lot of those turn stops, which is good. This one, for example, the B4 stopping literally a block away from its big stop in front of the 77th Street subway stop makes a lot of sense. One just around the corner near the funeral parlor, those make a lot of sense. Others are literally on the same block as another stop. This B4 stop literally down the block from the other one. Those also seem to make a reasonable amount of sense. Here's another example of moving a bus to the far side, which is correct. Far side of an intersection. The gray is where it originally was. Green is the new location. There are others, though, that, for example, the B4, this cut here, on Colonial. It makes sense from a pure standpoint of distance. It technically meets the requirements to hit the MTA's goal, but I don't think they understand how hilly that area is. So that is quite a bit of uphill walking for residents, which I'm not sure if we should be concerned about or not, but I had a little bit of a problem with that. And then as well, some of these stops here right on 7th Avenue are often pretty good intermodal stops. It's good for getting on the other bus lines that go up and down 7th. Yeah. So a little bit more of a walk. I guess the MTA figured, hey, it's still on the same block, these two. You know, an extra 500 feet maybe is what I'm eyeballing off of that. But again, the MTA is unlikely to move those.
No chance. It's a long walk.
Yep. It's a lot of this is, and we got to be cognizant that a lot of this is the MTA is balancing people walking further, but buses going faster. And they know that. They've heard every argument for or against that, I'm sure, from all the other boroughs. They already did the Bronx and the Queens. And I'm not sure how many unique arguments we can make for, I don't want to walk 500 more feet. I think we need to have good reasons why, and data that might actually convince them for some of these eliminations. Diker gets a little weird. Josephine might go into that. Let's hit the B8.
Wait, Dan, let me do this.
Oh, yeah.
Doris, we have some questions.
Ooh.
We have one question from a member of the public. Doris, do you want to handle those as we go through each route? That might be.
I think that's logical. Okay. So let's take the question.
Okay, so just give me a moment. Okay, so we have a member of the public, Paul D. Nicola. Paul, you should be able to unmute yourself if you have a question. You said you had a question about the B4.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I have a question about the B4 stop, the first stop on Narrows Avenue and 77th Street.
Yes.
I live right there. It's extremely problematic because by getting rid of the bus stop on Colonial and 78th, which kind of shares where the buses begin, I already have 3 buses at a time, you know, that sitting outside blocking all of Narrows Avenue there. They have to make the turn onto 77th Street. There have been so many accidents right on that corner of Narrows. I'm constantly calling the police about accidents that occur with buses there. At the same time, you have lots of, since it's the last stop on the bus, you have folks who, you know, have had way too much to drink or have not found a place that they could shelter for the night. And who are getting thrown off the bus right there on 77th and Narrows and finding their way into the homes right there. So I've had people literally walk into my home. I've had people, you know, fall asleep in my backyard. And so it just, it seems, you know, for a variety of issues, of reasons, this seems like a problematic stop to have multiple, you know, I've talked to the MTA about this, but once they remove that stop on 77th and Colonial, then all of the buses are going to be on 77th and Narrows, which is going to make this even worse. So, you know, at this time of change, I'd really like for them to consider whether or not there's any opportunity to move this at least down to Shore Road, where they could, you know, they could let off the final stop, you know, be on the other side where there's a park, right? It's really problematic. And whether it's police or having to call ambulances for people who are just left on the sidewalk. And this is this is a residential area, and it's turned into, you know, a combination of bus terminal and folks who really need help in a place where there's not much help.
Okay, well, thank you.
Interesting
Paul.
point. Thank you.
You know, it's a
Yeah.
good point, and we're gonna jot that down. You know, the board is gonna create an advisory recommendations in February after the workshop at our next meeting, the meeting following that presentation. So thank you, Paul. We encourage you too to send those comments on to the MTA. Since you signed on to our meeting, we'll be sending a follow-up email as well.
Thank
So
you very much.
Thank you.
Just
Larry?
as a historical note, no, that route 77, 78 has not changed since the route was established in 1931.
Mhm.
How long it's been that way, so
Okay. That's
more than
good.
90 years, it's been that same route. The original franchise in 1927 called for it to go to the 69th Street Pier, but this is what was instituted in 1931.
Thank you, Evan.
Unchanged
Thank
ever
you.
since.
Okay, Dan, moving on
Yeah.
to the debate.
And I will say, I this is one of those moments where I was looking for a little bit more rerouting from the MTA. Just, you know, it could easily, like, Shore Road needs more transfers. I think we'll get to that when we
Yes.
talk about the express lines.
Yes.
But it would be a great opportunity. I know it has to go south to hit 77th Street subway stop, and it doesn't, that means it can't really easily go down Bay Ridge Parkway, but there are other ways that we could route that. Especially when you consider how much of this part of Bay Ridge is kind of a transit desert.
Yes.
And I understand the MTA might even be justifying this with oh, there aren't enough people who are using this stop, so we have cut it. I think that might be the reason why the Colonial stop is eliminated. I will say that the MTA does not make the ridership of individual stops public like it does for subway stops.
Mhm.
So it is very hard to judge. And I think that when an area is underserved, it will have fewer passengers. That's not a reason to cut it. That is a reason to increase service. Anyway, going on to B8. The B8 actually does no changes in Bay Ridge. And all of the changes in CB10 are actually make a ton of sense. There are a lot of extraneous stops outside of the VA before they had built the little bus bays, the bays for public transit. So they are now using those, but those other stops still exist. And they are basically axing all of those to kind of centralize all of their stops at the entrance bays to the VA hospital. Might be a little bit longer of a walk if there are Army base personnel taking the bus to the main Army base entrance, but it is not very far of a walk.
You know, it's interesting, Dan. I do see people waiting for the bus at those bus stops.
It's strange. I
and
don't
it's
think people
most-
know that the bays exist.
Yeah, because on the weekend, I would say, you know, when I travel there more often, it's park goers.
Yeah.
Who use
Yeah.
those that line.
It might
So
feel a little awkward to like walk onto
Walk
the
into
hospital
the-
property to wait for
Right.
the bus.
Right.
And I think this is the MTA's attempt to kind of push more people to consolidate, because it is a lot of extra stops, I bet, that the buses are making. If all of those stops have like one or two people on them each, that definitely will speed things up. But I would just say to the MTA, make sure that that is posted and signed, and you
Yeah, I
know,
don't-
the hospital can kind of make it more apparent that those stops are there on its grounds. And that's the B8, and then there's like one of those turn stops where it's like literally right
But
after.
That's that's a really long way from the VA hospital down to Bay.
Yeah.
Bay, yeah, I was, you know, and that's used by workers and by visitors and even some patients.
Yeah, it's a long way to walk. Luckily, it's I mean, it is mostly park, but that's another thing that we can talk about when we get to Shore Road. Is they've eliminated some stops, especially on Shore Road, that are park entrances. And I know we just went over, they're getting a new vendor for the golf course soon, and we don't know what golf course changes might be underway. So it might be prudent to think about the distance between these two stops.
Well, it's not only
And
the golf course, but it's across the street, you know. the field's
Exactly.
Across the street. So people do travel by bus.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it might be interesting to see if we can advocate for, if all these are eliminated, maybe an intermediary stop there for the park Might be an interesting idea. They might, again, a lot of what the MTA is doing, I've noticed that they really are thinking more about the spacing, and they really didn't think too much about the context of where these stops are. And we can go into that more. But again, B8, mostly the same.
Shares
Moving
of
on.
70 also.
Yes, absolutely. And the B70 will be going over kind of the same thing, except that the B70 stops at the VA. B9 is important to focus on because the B9 will be important when we get back, head over to the B64 in a little bit. But again, some of the turn changes, actually, these really aren't turn changes, turn eliminations. They eliminated one that was on the same block as as Severian, at the rear of Severian and the front of Severian. So I guess they said, let's keep the stop that's in front of the actual school and not in the parking lot, where all of the school buses park. I don't know if this stop was really important for people who might have been wanting to head out into the rest of the residential district. That's very possible. This might be an extra block of a walk now that the Narrows Avenue was eliminated.
Thank you.
And then there's also an elimination eastbound on Narrows Avenue. I guess they're assuming that you know, these technically fulfill the MTA's requirement or guideline that they have for themselves of trying to limit the stops to around anything above 1,300 feet or so is what they don't want. And this, I think, the gap between Colonial and Shore Road stops technically fits within that guideline, just barely. But it might be hard to convince them to keep this particular
But
stop.
I'll tell you that's a fairly popular stop.
It
because
is.
There are several large buildings there, and people take the bus.
Apartment houses, right?
The subway, you know,
Mhm.
large apartment houses.
Yes.
It's used for access to the subway.
Yeah.
And just where is that's like, okay, where the new Bay Ridge Center will be, it's Bay Ridge in between, so it should not be too bad.
Yeah. I mean, and this area is also a little flatter, but once you
Yes.
start getting up toward Bliss Terrace, that really starts getting hilly. So I
Right.
mean,
The new Bay Ridge Center is going to be off of Shore Road on Bay Ridge Avenue. And the issue there is with the 64 is that many of the, and we've asked the Bay Ridge Center if we could supply them with a survey for its members on how many members travel to the Bay Ridge Center currently and what bus lines that are utilized to see how many travel on the 64, because certainly the MTA using pre-pandemic data certainly is not aware that a new multi-service senior center is going to be opening right off of Shore Road on Bay Ridge Avenue.
mhm. And we did get another comment about the Narrows and 77th Street stop on the B4 and that terminus, and really how much of a problem it is that all those buses are both idling and people are being let off at that stop, and that removing those Colonial stops is going to make that even worse with more people getting off. So important to say that more people are, you know, commenting on that in the chat. And then the other one for the B9 is that they are eliminating the 65th Street stops right before the overpass, the ones that are for the Bay Ridge Towers. There are a lot of Bay Ridge Towers eliminations. I think the only one that's really retained is on 3rd Avenue. But on here, we got 2 eliminations. It does create a very wide gap. But again, I think the MTA allows for the longer gaps when there isn't too much activity in between. So, yeah.
Don't forget that bus previously had run on 3rd Avenue.
Yeah.
That's some years ago, we approved that, the change from 3rd Avenue to 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems as though, I mean, I read your article and it seems that they are not using that same philosophy on 5th Avenue, because it looks like 5th Avenue, the stops are 3 blocks apart, whereas, you know, here we have wide gaps without any bus service.
Yeah. there are some Fifth Avenue changes and some Third Avenue changes that really go over the MTA's own internal guidelines, and those really do need to be called out, because they do not make maps like this public. They have a public interactive map, but it does not show the stops. It only shows the lines. I don't think that any other neighborhood has a map like this right now. So I don't think people are really checking the MTA on stuff like this. I think we have a couple of hands up too.
Yes, Daniel, Loud?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm actually a little surprised that they're cutting so many Bay Ridge Towers stops. Now, I mean, my understanding again from reading what you put together was that there's not much ridership, or at least not many riders getting on or off there. I'm confused
Maybe?
by that. I mean, what do we know what's happening? Because it's not like they're extremely close to a subway either. I mean, I guess 59th, but I don't know.
They're
Do you know
halfway
why that might be?
between.
Yeah.
I mean, I could make heads or tails of it, and also I feel like the MTA isn't factoring in that the IBX seems like it's moving forward,
Yeah.
the passenger rail line, and those stops along the Bay Ridge line, the Bay Ridge freight line, maybe we don't exactly know where the passenger station may be located, if it can be located down that far, or if it really will be centered at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We don't know, but it seems a little weird that they might have to re-add those stops if there's heavy passenger traffic. And Steve also has a hand raised.
Steve?
Oh, yeah. Hey, how's everybody?
Good.
Am I on camera?
Yes,
Okay.
you're on.
Okay, very good. I'm just listening real carefully. And my comment then is that, and you might agree with me, disagree with it, I'm not sure. It seems to me that there's two issues here that I'm hearing from people. One of them are what I call max-min problems. The maximum number of buses you need, the minimum number.
Yes.
These are classic mathematical max-min problems to which the MTA is almost exclusively have that material in their own possession. And it becomes very difficult for us to really comment upon that. What I do find is that the gentleman who was complaining about the bus on Colonial Road before, these are the human issues. It's
Yes.
different than max-min, and I think what I'm hearing here is more about, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's not a question of how many buses, because it seems like we don't possess enough information to make that determination. But I think that we should address, just to make my feelings clear, I believe we should definitely address the issues for people who have complaints about bus stops, and I've been I used to ride that Colonial, Colonial stop when I would go to Zavarian, and it's been there ever since. Nevertheless, what I'm hearing from that gentleman than it ever was, and I think that those are the ones that we should concentrate on. Just my feelings.
Absolutely. I actually agree with that 100%. It was very hard when I was trying to write a little bit of blurb for every single elimination, and a lot of them were like, okay, technically this is fine because it fits within the MTA's guidelines, and I don't think we can change the MTA's formulaic algorithm of how it's supposed to best serve us with all these ridership numbers that we don't have access to, et cetera.
Correct.
It is a mathematical issue. Then there are the others that they clearly disregarded some contextual issues that I think
Correct.
we know about that they did not. So for example, a good example, of course, is the 77th Street narrow stop, which I was unaware of really as a problem. And now I know that that really does need to see a significant relook. If the MTA is doing a redesign, this is their opportunity to change that.
Precisely.
And same thing for, there's going to be a new senior center on the corner of Bay Ridge Avenue and Shore Road. That's another thing that's important for them to know and include and know that people are concerned about it and looking at it. The idea that they might be looking at their math, and we just want to remind them, hey, for the Bay Ridge Towers, your math might show that there aren't that many people here, but there might be a passenger line. Don't know if you remember that. And, they need more access, not less. We don't want to discourage. Again, things that may not factor into their math equation. Those are the things
Exactly.
we really should be focusing on. And an
Thank you. That's
acknowledgement.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, Dan, that's exactly what I'm saying here. Because I'm saying I think that we should be concentrating on the human issues, not the mathematical issues, because we're just never going to be able to do what's necessary to tell people that you're wrong about this or something of that nature.
Yeah, and it's important also for individual people to share their stories about those stops, but also to keep in mind that, like, you may have to walk further. That will make the bus faster. So we can't drop a stop right in front of your
Correct.
house if you want it to be convenient. It is about the larger benefit of public transportation. It's for the public, it's for everyone. It can't please everybody perfectly, but there are things that they can do to make it more effective and be good neighbors about it. So
Yeah, and there are a lot of seniors who reside in the Bay Ridge towers. And, you know, my recollection in speaking to residents who live there, many of them rely upon that. And it is a far walk for them. So they may not, you know, there's 831 families that live there. You know, there may be 100 people who, you know, of that utilize that regularly, and that may be a small number for MTA, but it's very impactful to those residents. So I'll certainly make
Absolutely.
sure that we reach out to the towers to
And I
post.
would like to point out that walking, eliminating those stops, if people are going towards the 59th Street station, that's a dangerous walk.
Yeah.
Yes,
A very, very dangerous walk.
That's
going
true.
under that overpass is very bad.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. We have a
Yeah,
board
if-
member,
if-
Barbara Pollock. Oh, I'm sorry. Barbara, then Steve.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you, Barbara.
Okay, so I typed something in the chat, but I don't know if people saw it. In eliminating the 3 stops at near the Veterans Hospital at Poly Place, is that going to impact the urgent care center in terms of having access to public transport?
I don't. There
um,
are 2 stops that are built into the VA hospital that are retained.
Right, but the VA hospital is pretty
Exactly.
far from the Maimonides urgent care facility. And if you're going to eliminate all 4 of those stops, I don't know that there's going to be a public transport option.
Well,
for
yeah,
the-
the Victory, I mean, the new Maimonides urgent care or emergency room is going to be around the corner, around the bend.
There are
Right,
stops there,
but
so-
is there going to be a public transportation option close to
Option.
the
I see what you're saying. That's a good point.
That is a good point. Yeah. Again, these are the kind of things the MTA is not going to be aware of, because they don't know what's coming like we
Right.
do.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
because
Barbara.
even in terms of staff, not only visitors, I mean, how
Yeah.
are people to get to work?
Yeah, we will definitely note that, Barbara. Thank you.
My
Steve?
turn.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm very happy to hear this, because what I'm hearing here is the human elements, which I think is the things that we should be concentrating on, things that the MTA just wouldn't know about and can't include in their numbers. Okay, because I think they're looking, exclusively at the numbers rather, and and I think that and the algorithms, okay, that kind of thing. And I think we have to bring to their attention the human aspect more than anything else. I also just wanted to say that at some point I may have to jump off here. I wanted to make sure that I was here for the evening.
Thank you. We have a member of the public with a question. Enza Di Nicola. Enza, you are should be able to unmute now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, so I hate to repeat, but I feel like I really need to. As a resident at the corner of Narrows and 77th, I've had repeated issues where my children are not safe. My family is not safe. Because it is a beginning and end stop for the route, rather than it being on Shore Road where there's a park across the street, you have individuals who have been removed from buses, where my security cameras show that they have been literally pushed off of buses and left on that corner. And my home and the homes nearby are the first places where they can find refuge. So that means my 3 children, my 3 special needs children, are not safe to be outside their home because there is always a concern of some individual who should not be there, who is better served in a hospital setting. But we have to be consistently aware of who is out there at all times of the day. I cannot express enough what Steve said, which is the human issue. This, what seems to me illogical placement of a bus stop in an entirely residential area that affects families and creates concerns where I have adult inebriated people entering my home while I have 3 young children. I cannot express enough how much this is disastrous and absolutely frightening.
We hear you. Thank you so much.
I need more than appreciation. I really need you to understand that this illogical placement is a safety issue. The concerns, I've had car accidents, I've had people laid out on my lawn, literally laid out on my lawn. I have my children, my 9-year-old has now learned how to call 911 and ask for the ambulance because there is a person who is laying out on his front stoop and he's afraid to leave the house.
Enzo, we are gonna put all of those comments into our recommendation. Absolutely.
I really think that you need to also understand the chaos that it creates in a family where chaos is already part of the daily routine, right? 3
Absolutely.
special needs children and people outside my house all hours of the day, inebriated, or laying across my lawn, or literally entering my house and walking through my living room as I hide in my bedroom and call 911.
Yeah.
Is not a logical placement for an ending stop for any bus route.
Okay, thank you.
I need someone to hear me.
Yeah,
Yep,
and so we heard earlier, like apparently this stop was placed in the 30s, and that's not a reason to keep a stop, right? A 30s or 40s. It's like it's all,
Larry, 1931.
1931. Larry's the best. Yeah, when the that's not a reason to keep a stop. Obviously, it's almost a century. Things have changed. It was almost undeveloped at that time. Now it's a vibrant residential neighborhood. There, if the MTA is going to be doing a bus network redesign, they need to do some redesigning.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Got it. Okay, Daniel Loud.
I mean, yeah, just, you know, in response to Enza's comment too, I mean, Dan, does it make sense, or would it make sense to, you know, suggest having this stop at 79th and Shore Road also as a way to connect to the, what's the number now, B37 to the express route? I mean, that seems pretty logical.
I mean,
X37.
X37. It's now going to be called the BM37 and the BM7. But yes, this is one of those moments where I'd love to see the MTA do a proper design to stop idling it at Narrows Avenue. And this is me just being a designer. I can't design for the MTA. I don't have their data. But it seems like having these 2 stops loop so close together, bring it further south. If you need to find a one-way street that works, bring it further south, loop it along Shore Road, have the stop be at Shore Road where we need more transfers and more access. We'll get to this later, but they're eliminating one stop, one entire route that goes down to Shore Road.
That's right.
I would love to see, why does this stop here? And again, I get it. 78th Street dead ends. It doesn't connect. It's not a clean little loop for them. Make it wider. Make it wider. It's okay.
No, so it's been noted, and you know, certainly, you know, we encourage 2 residents to bring those comments forward. But looking, and when we formulate our recommendations to the MTA after the February 9th presentation, I think, you know, Daniel Loud, Dan, I mean, Steve, I agree. It makes absolute sense.
Oh, and Larry, yeah.
No, the MTA has always said that they don't like right-hand turns on bus lines. So I was just thinking that instead of having the terminal at 77th and Narrows, just run it up to Bay Ridge Parkway, make a left, then make another left on Shore Road, and then turn, have the terminal there on Shore Road, and then make another left turn on 77th Street. Because I know the DA has said in the past, they don't like right-hand turns, so if that's one way they could do it, make it move that way.
Yeah, I think we need to let them know that the neighborhood is okay with readjusting this line.
Yes.
And they can absolutely take this out and really give it a proper redesign. It's fine. But I'm sure maybe we'll hear from other people who don't like that, but I feel like this issue really does need to be resolved based on these comments.
Okay, we've got a lot of bus lines to go.
Yeah, let's keep going. I'll try to rush through some of these. So B16, there's some Diker changes along Fort Hamilton that are, again, about those spacing things. We can talk about those. They are eliminating a few right at the triangle, right after the more intermodal stop here at Fort Hamilton Parkway and Bay Ridge Parkway. They're eliminating a couple that occur right before those crossovers, and they're moving one stop, interestingly enough. And there again, these are some, they technically fit within the distance requirements, but they are a little odd. There's one stop that, again, over here on 95th Street that's being cut.
Another Shore Hill, right?
You notice it?
Yeah.
You're eliminating this, that's, oh,
Shore Hill's right.
okay.
Yes, it is. They are eliminating.
Just
Yeah,
stop at Shore Hill.
they are eliminating stop before Shore Hill, and then they are keeping the stop directly after Shore Hill. I bet they think that this one is the one that's supposed to serve Shore Hill. But we need to tell them that's not how I've seen people use it.
Shore Hill's on 91st Street, not 92nd.
One thing that we heard during the
You're right.
BSA hearings is that, residents that live in Shore Road, the biggest feedback we heard back was that they live in a transportation desert.
Yeah.
And whenever I visit the seniors at Shore Hill, that's what I hear. The B16 service is terrible. I can't imagine losing that stop.
And you can see how like a map maker would be like, oh, this stop pairs with this stop. This stop pairs with this stop. What's this stop for? And they kill it. And they don't realize the people that use it. Right?
Right.
So this is an absurd. I might add an overlay here of the express stops as well. But hilariously, they keep the express drop off, but eliminate the B16.
And can someone hear, can I be heard?
Yeah,
No.
Barbara.
That stop, I walk by that stop all the time. There are always people in
Yes,
front of
there
that
are.
stop
There are.
using it, either staff or residents. I mean, there are always people sitting there waiting for the bus. That's one of the few places where, because I walk all the way from 95th Street to 79th Street. And that's one of the few bus stops that I see that's ever really utilized in terms of having people waiting.
And this is another weird thing, is that they eliminate the B16 and keep the express stop. And then on the next stop at Oliver, they eliminate the express stop but keep the B16.
Right. It's crazy.
They're really they need to make major modifications to Shore Road. It seems like they're again trying to push numbers around and statistics around, and not thinking about what is good transit and what makes good transfers. Again, Shore Hill should be sacrosanct. That there needs to be. We already went through a whole thing of new housing on Shore Hill, and they don't have proper public transit. And now we're cutting stops nearby. That's crazy.
And, excuse me, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to say I had to drop off. I just want to say thank you to Dan, because I think he did a very, very good job. We're not voting on anything tonight, are we?
No.
No, okay. But I do think that Dan did a very good job. I still say, let's stick with the human issue, okay?
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Steve. All right, I'm gonna keep going down. There is a pretty large, a pretty wide gap further down the B16 at 97th Street. This, I believe, is right where the new ramp is for the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful stop. It just barely meets those mathematical guidelines that the MTA is thinking about, but it's a beautiful stop and it's right near the entrance to the park. Right? I don't have too much familiarity with it. I'm more of a Northern Bay Ridge person. I'd be interested to hear if residents really like that stop, if it is useful. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, also I just, and I'm getting this from what you wrote, but you know, isn't there an issue with the stop that they kept of like ADA accept or you know, disability accessibility?
Yes, we also have to think about these stops are along that narrow strip,
Yeah.
right? Along that, like, because there's that little parking lane.
Yes.
That and a lot of these stops are very poorly accessible. We've had complaints before about wheelchair access at these stops. On
Most
community
stops
board.
on Shore Road are not accessible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cobble
We hear this
is
all the
not
time, yeah.
friendly.
Right.
The cobble is very unfriendly. And these are really isolated.
Yeah.
Parts cars block them. Good luck getting a wheelchair up there. Good luck loading a bus with wheelchair accessibility at a stop like this.
Yeah.
We have a question from a member of the public. Linda Mitchell Kemp. Linda, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Well, I'm actually in Mount Sinai Hospital right now. I just finished having an operation, and this is so important to me, and I never do it on my phone, ever. So this is a real big issue to me. And I'm really not quite sure why anything has to change. I'm not getting why. And now I go to Mount Sinai. I don't take subways anymore. I take the X27, the 57th of Madison, and then the Madison Avenue bus. I have used almost every stop on the X27 for one thing or another. And I see that you guys got into B16, and I think the B16, unfortunately, has a lot of people absent from driving buses, and it's particularly concerning to me because there are so many elderly folks who do in fact use the B16, and it seems that it doesn't seem to be repaired well. But basically I'm asking why anything has to be changed at all. I'm feeling like this is a money issue, or I'm not quite sure what the problem is.
Thank you.
I could try to field that a little bit. Obviously I'm not the MTA. I'm not beholden to them. I don't know what they are doing. This as a citywide thing. They started in the Bronx and they're kind of moving clockwise through the boroughs. They finished up, they're working on doing a final thing for Queens. Brooklyn is just kind of started up. There was a pause during COVID. Some of these, it seems counterintuitive, but a lot of these cuts are designed to make the buses move faster. Because one thing that they found is that people don't ride because it's too slow. The MTA has gotten hit in the press a lot for how pokey a lot of their buses are. It takes forever to get from one end to another. Mm-hmm.
E63 is the Pokey Award for Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, it won the Pokey Awards. So
I'm not quite sure if I'm still being heard.
Oh, we hear you, Linda.
Yes.
There's so much traffic that if you eliminate stuff, you're still a stop. You're still going to wait through traffic to get to the next designated stop.
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, we know what's happening. Madison Avenue used to be a breeze to drive on or go on. It no longer is because of construction, restaurant build outs and such. So I don't buy into that it's going to move things along. It's just going to eliminate a stop, but not traffic or traffic lights.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Thank you.
That is a good point. And I mean, that's a common thing with public transit design is in order to make that traffic go away, you need more people on public transit. But how do you get more people on public transit? It's a self-defeating cycle for a lot of transit designers is, it's bad. So people want to drive. How do you get people to not want to drive? You have to have faster buses. So I feel the MTA is doing whatever they can. So again, there are a lot of little factors. Bus idling at a station or a stop is only one small part of why a bus is slow. They're trying to eliminate the one thing they can control, it seems, in hopes that it starts a cycle that improves traffic and then improves all these other things. It seems to be what they're doing. They've already done it, and it's going to be happening in Brooklyn. I think it's really about there are cuts coming. And we as a neighborhood really need to join together and try to fight for the few that we think are bad cuts. They're gonna cut a bunch of stops though. But we have to advocate, and maybe we can get the ones that we can saved or moved or totally redesigned. This is their opportunity to really go back to the drawing board, and they don't do it that much in Bay Ridge. So thank you though, seriously.
Okay.
So I will continue on. They're also eliminating a couple of these corner stops right near the terminus, which make significant sense. This is literally right around the corner from where you pick it up. There's an elimination right on the corner of Marine Avenue, but they're keeping the one right around the corner. And oh yeah, Larry.
No, Fontbonne is one of those two stops.
Yeah, the Fontbonne stops. Yeah. They also, let's move over to the B37,
Right.
which we're going to the north-south lines now. And it's a bit of a mess. They are eliminating the stop in front of the Last Stop Deli, which is, it is what it is. The Last Stop Deli will no longer apparently have a proper namesake. But as the B37 moves north, they are really
The Last Stop Deli?
Yeah, the stop in front of the Last Stop Deli.
That is not the layover for the bus. It's actually on Shore Road.
No, it is. It's on Shore Road. So they're cutting.
But the bus drivers use that stop.
Yes.
Because it's not isolated. They can buy food, and they can do lots of things. And I wonder if they have talked to their bus drivers.
I wonder. Because really, there's nothing. It's an apartment complex over here. It's the low-rise apartment complex on down here. This is where they do stop. And this also, again, I hate going back to the 77th Street and Narrows again, but this is what they were talking about, where they're saying, buses are now going to bunch up at the terminus because bus drivers will stop at previous stops right before the official terminus. Now more buses are going to be idling at this very busy Shore Road section with the elimination of the Last Stop Deli. I wrote in my article, this is the last stop. Eliminating it won't speed buses up because there's no stop after it.
It will be a tremendous inconvenience for the drivers.
Yes. I think that this is one of those ones that they eliminated just to move the average. So they could say that the average distance is increased overall on the route, but it does not actually make buses faster to eliminate this one. I think we should save the Last Stop Deli.
And Dan, I think that's a good example also of, the human experience, to use Steve's phrase, of residents and commuters getting off stops that are near commercial establishments and shopping because they want to grab that, grab the convenience items before they go on their way home. And it's a good relationship between the commercial businesses and, our residents. And I don't think the MTA their map drawers look at that at all.
No, they don't. They see a map like this. They don't see a map where we can look at that stop and go, oh, we know exactly what's there.
Right.
But I'll move north to try to keep things moving. I don't want this to be like a 3-hour thing, but I could do 3 hours. But I know you guys maybe not. There's a lot of reconfiguration south of 86th Street. And I believe this is to fix the distancing things, because a lot of the stops south of 86th Street are actually they vary in width rather significantly, because you can see how the grid kind of comes together at angles. So I'm not sure the MTA designers knew how to make this work quite right. So they moved a lot of things. So going north, they moved. I'm going to do the northbound first, and then I'll reverse and go southbound. So they eliminated a stop at 97th Street. Technically pretty close. It's now a four block distance between them. But they also then eliminate at 92nd Street. I'm sure everyone knows that this is, I believe, the stop right in front of Food Town.
Right.
So that is a major grocery store stop. There is a bus shelter there. They know that it's important.
And people always sitting there.
Always sitting there, because that
Always.
is where a lot of our seniors they'll take the bus, and everybody who wants to just take the bus to get. This is one of the only large grocery stores south in Southern Bay Ridge, and we're eliminating the bus stop right in front of it.
That makes no sense at all. Absolutely no sense at all.
They're keeping the one just down another block. I think they're seeing it and going, oh, it's just another block away, the one near the Bay Ridge Diner. But again, proximity for something like this is key.
Yes.
A block
How can people
matters
get-
greatly for something like this.
People can't carry their bags 2 blocks or a block or whatever, especially
Yes.
seniors. You know, we have to make it conducive for them to be able to frequent these grocery stores, et cetera, for their needs. There's no
Yeah.
thought process behind that.
I was very angry by this. This is one of the first things I noticed in the redesign, and does not make sense to me. If you do keep this stop and eliminate the next stop, then you do create a really big gap. I think the next stop would kind of be at 86th Street. It's rather extreme. I can't solve that. I'm not an MTA bus designer. I think they should really go back to the drawing board and treat this
Yes.
92nd Street stop as an anchor, and then build off of that. Because that is the most important thing on this stretch, I think. No denigration meant for all of the other commercial establishments along that route, but that's very important. And they do, on the southbound side, they move a stop closer to Food Town, but then they also eliminate one that was just a block south. It's a mess. I'm just going to say overall, I really had a hard time making heads or tails of it, and I've lived this for like 2 months straight, and I can't quite figure out what they did here. Back to the drawing board on that. But when you head north, it gets a little simpler. They do eliminate a stop at 80th Street, again, part of that gap thing. I don't like eliminating stops along commercial avenues in general. I think that, like Josephine said, that's why you're taking the bus, to get to a location.
Right.
You need stops, you need destinations. They keep the one at 77th, which serves as kind of the transfer point to the B4.
We're next to the phone building.
Yeah, right next to the old phone exchange. So, I mean, yeah, they're there, they're kept. And again, important changeover at Bay Ridge Parkway. It's important to keep them at major avenues. That's where a lot of people congregate. They keep one at 77th. Keep that in mind. Stick a pin in that, because that will matter when we get over to 5th Avenue. They keep changeover at Bay Ridge Avenue. They're eliminating a lot of stuff on Senator Street. We'll get into that also when we head over to the express routes. Again, they are, when you look at a map, they seem very close. I mean, again, this is where there are a lot of medical facilities here as well. I'm not fully comfortable with the elimination.
The old hip center was there.
Yeah.
And don't forget, they're going to be adding the school over there as well.
Yes. So,
The high school is down the block also.
and that
Ella
might,
Tech is just down the block also.
yeah, it is. And I think schools are one of the moments where the MTA does not like eliminating a stop. I think bringing that up might actually change something like this. They do very much they've retained in a lot of other neighborhoods, even if they're close together, the stop in front of the school always stays. They know that kids need those buses. And And they do keep, this is the one, the 3rd Avenue, this is the stop that they keep for Bay Ridge Towers. Goes right between the two.
Well, just a little bit about history. I mean, it was some years ago, I remember when the late Joanne Seminara was chair, they had bus stops on 3rd Avenue every 2 blocks. Now they're making it almost every 4 blocks.
And I know I haven't
Well,
gotten into
historical trend is
scheduling.
Cut back.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten into scheduling that much here, because there are only minor changes across all of Bay Ridge, but the north-south lines do not have any change in service. The headways on the B37 remain in the 20+ minute range. So yeah, maybe eliminating these stops will make it faster on the bus. It will not make the bus come more frequently, which is
utilitarian.
the frequency is what really makes the north-south lines frustrating for me personally. I mean, I can walk the length of Bay Ridge and the time it would take for a bus to arrive.
The frequency is extremely lengthy because I know if you look back at the 1974 bus map for Brooklyn, the B37 used to run every 8 minutes, weekdays and on Saturdays as well. Now they're once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
We do have a question from a member of the public.
Oh, does anyone know any sort of correction for average ridership numbers being affected by bus bunching? Yeah, that's a good question. Anecdotally, I see quite a few overlapping buses on the express route, which results in nearly empty buses on the full trip to Manhattan. I'm sure this affects the MTA's numbers. I'm sure it does.
Okay, and we have an attendee, Ivana Albanese Rizzo. Ivana, you can unmute.
Thank you. I just have a question. I might have missed it. By NYU Langone, the ambulatory center, there's a stop there, and it's just a disaster. It's so dangerous because you have all these ambulettes also parking in the bus stop, as well as cars and, car service, et cetera. Is that being eliminated or moved in any way?
That's on 4th Avenue, Dan. Right? That's
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right above
isn't that's right across from communications, right near the R train, right?
Yes.
Let me see. I'm going to turn everything on so I can see what we got going on right on.
Wouldn't that be the B64?
That would be. There is, and this is part of the new rerouting for the B64, which we'll get into. It's a whole can of worms, but the B64 is making now a turn north instead of continuing on toward the pier. And it is actually now integrated into that Senator Street stop right in front of the ambulatory center. The ambulatory center stops are actually being increased in frequency, where they're adding the B64 to it in addition to the B9. So the B9 is not eliminated from the ambulatory center.
There'll be 2 buses stopping there as well.
And that bus will be continuing on to NYU Langone in Sunset Park.
At the hospital.
Yes.
Okay, it's still going to be a disaster then on that corner.
Yes, there's a lot of conflicting uses.
Of traffic.
And there's a lot of double parking. The bus can't often get
Exactly.
to
The ambulance can't even get there. You see people in wheelchairs being double and triple parked as they get into the ambulatory center. I wonder if there's something that could be done about that, but I guess they do have to stop on that corner.
Right, but when there are vehicles, whatever they are, that are not supposed to be parked, maybe we could reach out to the center and make a designated ambulette area somewhere nearby
That's
to
a good
allow
idea.
the bus to get to the curb. Thank you for bringing that. I appreciate that. We'll add that to our list. Thank you.
Absolutely. Where was I? I was on the 37, but that's kind of the end of the 37. So we're going to jump over to the 63. So I'm gonna keep 37 up so you can kind of see it in comparison, but I'll start going south. Senator Street is also eliminated on 5th Avenue. Again, they're reasonably close. There's the stop right at Leif Erikson, and then again right in front of the Alpine. It fits their metrics. The one that does not fit their metrics at all, and it creates I think a 1,700 or something foot gap when their aim is 1,300, and they keep the one on 72nd Street on the B37, but they eliminate the one on 72nd Street on 5th Avenue.
5 blocks.
It's a massive gap.
Five-
Yeah.
Five-
Yeah. It again, they're aiming for 1,300, and they created one that was about 1,600, 1,700. I think is this is all just out of memory. So apologies if I'm not 100% accurate on it. But why? What? They keep the same one on third. I don't get it. No, just no. That's all I have to say about that one. And then they eliminate one on 77th Street. I get it. It's a block away or so from the a stop on Bay Ridge Parkway. And these are weird also because they're a little bit more spaced out. They're not as properly bunched together as 3rd Avenue. It seems like kind of like a lot more dotting. I'm not sure really what to say about 5th Avenue in that regard, but it's staying mostly the same. They're eliminating one on 84th Street right before you hit 86th Street. Again, really close. And then it pretty much stays the same.
They keep the one at the post office. Though.
They do keep the one in front of the post office. At least they're not that crazy. And then they're eliminating again in front of the Last Stop Deli and that corner right near Fontbonne. Because they know that you probably already. Why are you getting on the bus at Shore Road right here and then getting off when the bus makes the first right turn? Why did you pay the money for that? So I guess they're getting rid of that one. And let's see. Let's move to the B64, which is the yikes. This is our big reroute. This is what everyone's here to see.
On that one.
There are some change, and this is a big one because it goes through all of Diker, and there are changes there that I hope I have not given Josephine too little time to give a presentation for. I am sorry if I'm going long. They eliminate some rightfully some very odd those stops they do right before turns. Why are there so many stops on this one? There are 3 stops on Bay Ridge Avenue right here and 70th before you go over the Ovington overpass. And again, there's a stop
left over from when the expressway.
Right.
That's right.
The free expressway.
It probably went straight through, and then the bus went straight through also on Bay Ridge Avenue.
Exactly. And this is their way of getting over the Ovington overpass, and they wanted to put those stops at turns. And an algorithm, like early, algorithm was like, put a stop after every turn. All right, fine. We're putting like 6 stops within a 1-block radius. There is one stop that I have a problem with here, which is that they're eliminating the B64 southbound. This is right in front of, I think, a laundromat. They're eliminating the one in front of the laundromat, and they're keeping the one that's in front of someone's house, right next to their driveway. And I know we heard about it on 77th Street and Narrows. This one is right in front of that person's house. It is on the same block. Keep the one in front of the laundromat. Let's leave that poor person alone. It is when you look at the photo of it is rather ridiculous.
Yeah, and I see people in front of the laundromat. I mean, I walk that way often. I never see anyone at the other bus stop.
I don't know why it's there. Maybe for a transfer over on the B70, perhaps, but it doesn't start that early.
No.
It has to go over the Ovington overpass as well. So I don't understand this one. The MTA again is just kind of like dropping changes from on high. Let's leave this person alone.
And people who live along 7th Avenue who use this bus do also take that stop because it's the last one on, the Bay Ridge Avenue at 7th Avenue that they're eliminating.
Yeah.
So you have to walk back, or you would
have to walk back, but it's about like 100, 200 feet. It's pretty short. Again, it's also a short block. Again, these are those truncated.
Right, but if you live south of 7th Avenue, near where I live, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In order to get that stop, you have a much further walk because you have to walk back around to, if you're on 7th Avenue.
Yes, exactly.
So you see here, as you just move the map up, if you want to take this bus, now you have to go to either, 70th and 8th if you're further down, or Bay Avenue and 8th, or you have to walk over the overpass.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a weird one to keep. It's a weird one to keep. So this is again one of those, there's a person that lives there that doesn't deserve a second stop on the same block, and then they eliminate the one that's in front of a brick wall. It's a brick wall at that laundromat that one's in front of. Again, they eliminated another one on 6th. Technically fits within the guidelines. I don't know if anyone has issues with it, but that's the second that it hits 4th. The B64 now turns north, and you'll see all these little red dots all along Bay Ridge Avenue. The B64 doesn't go down to the pier. It does not follow the B9. And the B9 does have a service increase. It does increase in frequency in midday. I think the midday headway was around 20 minutes or so, and it's been reduced to about 10. So it's a pretty significant frequency increase, but it's only during, I think, weekdays midday. The other times no frequency increases on the B9. Because I know that will come up. Is the B9 increasing in frequency to make up for the fact that the B64 is not going down there? The answer is a little bit.
Could you define midday?
Excuse me?
What midday? Define midday. What?
Oh, midday. You know what? I might just bring up.
Oh, you can. I can look at that later.
No. I have it here. Let me go through my article. I don't like combining my site and community board, but it does have the necessary data. Whoop. I should make it easier to I should have just used the here we go. B64 midday 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is going from a 20-minute headway to a 15-minute headway. Late evening 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. going from a 30-minute to a 20-minute. Again, actually not as big as I thought. AM peaks on weekends, they're pushing them down by about 5 minutes a piece. Not much of a service increase. So I would have liked to see more if they're eliminating the B64. I'm sorry, this is the B64, not the B9. I'm totally incorrect here. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh, this is what happens to your brain when you look at this stuff for this long. Oh man, this is, yeah, okay. So it's not midday, it's early evening on weekdays, goes from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. That's what I was thinking of with the 10-minute improvement. So again, the B9 does run reasonably frequently on weekdays, under 10-minute, which is, take what you can get from the MTA. But in early evening, it had an atrocious headway of 20 minutes. They're pushing it to 10. So double the frequency. Yeah.
That's to service the people who take the N.
B9. Yeah.
If they take the N and they get off at 59th Street and then they take the B9 down.
Yes, that's what they can expect. And so if you're getting out a little bit late, restaurant job or something like that, you'll still have about a 30-minute wait really late in the evening, but you will at least have double frequency for, twilight. So they are increasing the B9 to make up a little bit for the 64. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't have those numbers. We're just like Steve said, we're guessing at the math in that. But it looks like they do acknowledge that they have to increase service. But blah. And the benefit though, that I do like for the B64 is it will now go, it integrates into existing stops. It does not integrate into the eliminated one by Bay Ridge Towers. I would like to see that integrated and that stop kept. But then it does go north to NYU Langone and the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So, and again, that might be a place where we have a big passenger station with the IBX, who knows? So, could be useful. I feel like there's a lot more to say on the 64, in case anyone has any questions or wants to comment on that.
I just want to say that for the B64, we did ask the MTA, and we'll follow up to provide what the transfer data is currently at 4th Avenue and 69th Street. What ridership currently is there, because we don't have access to that data, and what they expect the transfer will be.
Yeah, I would like to see that They only
As
have the
well as
ridership
well
for
as
the
the
route.
surveys to the Bay Ridge Center, which is a good population to poll.
And it's important because it acts as a fulcrum to allow you to access Shore Road. The Shore Road has
Correct.
such terrible access. Limiting the amount of stops that let you then move on down Shore Road is distressing.
Yeah, it's definitely eliminating access to the shore.
Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused about this B64. So am I assuming that it's coming down 69th Street and making the turn on 4th Avenue?
It's going down Bay Ridge Avenue, down 69th Street, and then once it hits 4th Avenue, it turns north. So I eliminated all the other stops on my screen share, and you can kind of
Okay.
see it
So
used to.
Yeah, I know it used to go down
Yeah.
60, because I took it all the time.
Yeah.
But
This is
now,
B1 before
where
the
is,
B74.
where is the stop on 4th Avenue and 69th? Is it before the light? Is it after the turn? Where is it?
I believe it goes right in
Post
front
office.
of. Yeah, there is a stop right in front of the subway stop.
Near the post.
Uh,
office.
Near the
Post
Yeah,
post
yeah,
office.
right near the is it
Ovington
the
Post.
Ovington Post?
So if anybody wanted to transfer from the B64 to the B9 to continue down to Shore Road, they're going to have to walk back to 69th Street and then walk across 4th Avenue and wait for the B9 over there.
Yes, so the transfer would look like you get off on the right side of the road and near the bus stop, the subway stop. You would have to cross over 4th Avenue once and then walk down.
Walk through the subway too.
Yeah. And walk across the street and then down maybe 100 feet or so to the stop that's kind of in front of that church, I think, or right near it. And then you would be able to grab the B9 from there, or theoretically you could stop. I think, can you stop? No, you really can't stop earlier on because the B9 comes from the other way. So yeah, that's
Otherwise,
the
you'd have to
only
cross
transfer
4th
stop.
Avenue. You'd have to cross 4th Avenue and go in front of the ambulatory center, the NYU Ambulatory Center.
Yeah,
And
if you
catch the
wanted.
B9 there.
Yeah, but most people are going to get off on the first available turn. So most people are getting off right in front of the R train. They're not going to risk taking that extra distance and then maybe missing a bus coming in the other direction. They're all going to get off at this turn and cross over and walk and get on the B9. Awkward transfer. Not the worst in terms of distance, but it would be nice if there was a stop where the B9 and the B64 synced up. I don't know if that's a possibility. Maybe they could push this down to 3rd Avenue. I don't think that would really help out though, because then they don't get their 59th Street connection with the new B64 route. So rerouting. It's our one reroute, and it's a little bit thorny. Yeah. We'll move on to the B70, which is kind of our 7th Avenue route. There's some minor Dyker Heights changes that I'm a little confused by. But on the Bay Ridge side, we have kind of like a hopscotch of eliminations. They eliminate pretty much every other stop along this route. They all technically fall within the MTA's guidelines. I just like to say personally that the 3 closest bus stops to my house have all been eliminated. Not just 1, but 3. Then they sync back up and they pretty much retain the same once they move south of around 82nd Street. They're all kept except for the terminus at the VA, where they eliminate a couple on Poly Place and they kind of try to keep it at the VA hospital. They do retain the one that's on the avenue for this one, right before it pulls in. So
Could you, oh, okay, where am I?
we're
2nd Street?
Yeah, so we're just near the VA hospital right
Okay,
now.
all right, okay. Got it.
Yeah, I wish I could increase the contrast a little
No,
bit
that's okay.
on this. And then we're going to get to the main event.
So
Here's
they're doing serious eliminations near the VA hospital.
yeah, I mean, I guess they're saying, hey, we're keeping the one that actually goes right up to the entrance. So
Right, but I
isn't
think
that
the-
enough for you?
Yeah, but the ones outside of are used by, those not going to the VA hospital.
Yeah.
And I think those
Again,
are mostly park goers, and there are people that live around the bend.
yeah.
I think we had another public question, member of the public, I'm not really sure. Ivana, Albanese Rizzo, did you have your hand raised?
Oh, I hope not. Maybe I forgot to lower it.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, no, that's okay, no worries, thank you.
All
There you
right, and we'll move on to the Express, which is, I think, the main event. They are eliminating. They're pretty much how I said they were hopscotching. They were eliminating one stop, keeping the next, eliminating one, keeping the next. The Express stops have a different metric for the MTA. They want to achieve around 1,600 feet of distance between Express stops. This actually, they don't follow this guideline for a lot of other neighborhoods. They do keep them close together, but Bay Ridge, they absolutely try to hit that 1,600 or more. And they eliminate pretty much every other stop along the route. They do make sometimes they make a correct move for moving to far side on the southbound, but then they move from a far side to a near side for no apparent reason at 79th Street here. I have no idea why they would do this. It should be, diagonally across from each other, not both on the same side. That's weird. I don't know why they moved that. And once you get past around 80th, things kind of pick back up into normality. They do add a new, I believe, a new stop when they turn right in front of the on 3rd Avenue. They add a stop right when it makes the turn, right here. So that's new.
Eliminate one.
Yeah, it's interesting to see.
Senator Street, they got rid of it.
Yeah, because they got rid of Senator Street, which has been a very, I've been fielding a lot of questions today from a lot of people who are like, Senator Street's always hopping. Everyone bunches up at Senator. So I guess they are now moving it south to Bay Ridge Avenue. That does make it a little easier to connect to other lines. It is a little bit closer to the R line. I'm not sure why you're commuting from the R then to the Express. Just to go into Lower Manhattan, maybe it's faster. I don't know.
That
But
is
again,
such a, that move in itself, I mean, that making that turn on such a busy corridor right there between 69th and 3rd Avenue
yeah,
would tend to create, because you've got the B37 that's stopping there as well, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Remember
The B37, they're integrating it into the B37 stop is what they're
Right,
saying
and-
they're
and-
going to do.
That, just making that turn with all the traffic at that juncture is, I think, creating more of a traffic jam than keeping it a block further. They let them put it in front of the Guild at 68th Street if they didn't want
This one here.
Senator Street.
Yeah,
But-
they want it a
That's
little
where the B9
closer
was
on.
moved.
Yeah.
The B9 was moved to 4th Avenue because of all this.
And there tends to be a lot of double parking and a lot of delivery at the 69th Street intersection.
Mhm.
And it's trying to park right after it makes a left turn. So interesting choice. I guess they figured they want to, combine the stops. Not sure if it really is the best choice. I know that the MTA is also simultaneously, they've already activated, I think they've already activated their front camera system on their buses on Staten Island to ticket cars that are parked in bus stops. So I feel like probably from the MTA's perspective, they feel like, we'll get rid of those double parked cars. We know that that's not going to deter people necessarily, but I think that's probably part of the MTA's response if we were to tell them at the larger meeting coming up, hey, there's a lot of traffic. They'll be like, well, we're gonna fix that later with technology and cameras and ticketing systems.
Dan, we have a question from a member of the public.
Oh, absolutely.
Tanya.
Hi there.
Hi.
First of all, Dan, this is such a huge amount of work, so thank you for doing this. And I think it's Larry. I'm loving all your historical tidbits.
Yes.
So just regarding the X27 or now the BM7, I suppose, it just seems I'm sure everyone agrees. It just seems very counterintuitive for a route explicitly designed to transport Bay Ridge residents into the city to eliminate so many stops. My particular stop is 88th Street, which is both a park entrance and in front of a very large apartment building. And there's just a massive gap between stops if they cut that out. And I'm not sure if this fits in our jurisdiction, but they also want to cut the route super short into Manhattan, which my commute goes to Spring Street, which isn't even that far into the city. And that would be too far into the city for this new route. It just seems very like they're going to discourage ridership even further. They're citing low ridership for these changes, but it's just going to discourage ridership further if there's so many fewer stops and it doesn't even get people down in our neighborhood into, you know, Midtown in less than 60 to 90 minutes.
It's not very express.
Yeah, it isn't very
Not very
express.
express.
And these are the only stops it has to make. Its frequency is very frequent. Again, we talk about how one of the previous commenters was like, these express buses bunch up so that they're empty. And then the MTA cites low ridership, right? So
Right, like it just seems like the whole point is to get Bay Ridge residents in up into Midtown, but now it's like like it just stops a little bit in Bay Ridge and then just, you know, heads right into the city, which is the purpose. But now they're
the speed of the express bus has never been the problem. The
No.
reason that people like it is because it's fast. It's already fast. I don't think you need to make it faster.
Yeah, I don't personally like. I don't think anyone minds the stops it currently makes, and now they're making it not go into the city hardly at all, which sort of makes me question why they have the route at this point.
And I will add, I did add this morning, the BM8, which I need to apologize to all of the 28 and 38 fans, because it does technically stop at my personal limit of Bay Ridge, but I've added this in this morning. You can see the 38, they add stops. They've added express stops in Diker on the 38 and the 28. And they are reasonably close together too, blocks apart in some cases. As opposed to here, the biggest gap again is yours at 88th Street. That is, I believe, a 2,100 or 200 foot gap. The MTA said that they want express buses to have a 1,600. That is far beyond, just realms beyond what even they say they want to achieve.
Yeah, and it's very hilly there, and it is an entrance to a park and in front of a major, like a really big apartment complex.
Yeah, they've missed the boat on this kind of hopscotching.
We have some board members, Barbara Pollock. Barbara, you're on mute.
You hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think many people, especially older residents and people who are retired, move to Bay Ridge because of the express bus. It's a huge draw for people who are looking at 15 or 20 years of retirement and having access to city services. And the idea that they're cutting that in an area that's a designated senior.
This is a NORC.
That's
Yeah.
north, not
Yeah.
Short-term.
Yeah.
All of the
don't-
eliminations are within the NORC, by the way. All of them.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And as I serve on the Bay Ridge Age Friendly Committee, I would agree wholeheartedly. And we're getting the most calls about the express bus reductions, the changes in the routes, the midday, which lots of seniors ride midday, inbound elimination, not reduction, elimination.
Yes. Well, I'm going to try to get to the service changes again, but you know, eliminations. You aren't riding this midday. They want to turn the express route into a commuter only experience. Again, with the limitations in Manhattan, which we can't really go over right now, but I feel like we should tell the MTA, especially in their meeting, their feedback meeting, because we're going to be the only ones that are going to complain about, when they get to Manhattan. It's not like they're going to ask the Manhattan community boards what they think about the Bay Ridge Express buses stops in Manhattan, right?
We had a fight
This is-
for weekend service.
the
We had a fight for weekend service on the express buses also.
Yes.
I mean, the other thing that's of concern is that the subway stop on this end of Bay Ridge on 95th Street is actually fairly far from Shore Road.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of older people to make that walk, I think is difficult too.
Absolutely.
So can we put that in the comments,
Yes,
Josephine?
absolutely.
And that's the end of the Bay Ridge stuff. Thank you for coming to my hour-and-a-half TED Talk. I'll go over it. Josephine, do you want me to
We have some more, we have some questions, so we'll do
Oh,
committee
great.
members first, and then we'll go into the public. Daniel Loud?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess a kind of a initial question followed by possibly a comment. I mean, it seems to me like this is, we are the people who are responsible for talking about the, elimination of service to Midtown Manhattan, right? I mean, they're doing it in this round. So I think it kind of does fall on us to explain why that's wrong, right? Even though it's technically in Manhattan.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was my impression. And, I think we can emphasize too, as I think it was Barbara who just said it, and other people have mentioned it too, what a transit desert Shore Road really is. I'm just going to call it the X27 because I haven't gotten used to it yet, is, that is the substitute. That is how people on Shore Road can probably most easily get into Manhattan. So, I mean, I think we have to emphasize that this is the option that's available for people, living below a certain avenue. Also, your cat is adorable.
I don't have my screen up, so I can't see that he's visible, but thank you.
Good. Doris,
Yeah.
right? Good point. Excellent point. Diane Granardis?
So I echo the sentiments about the express bus service, but what I wanted to mention was going back to the B16. Not the B. Is that the B16? The one which is the one that goes down 77th Street or 78th Street?
Before.
Oh, that's before.
Before.
The B4. Okay, so similar to what they're creating at 69th Street and 4th Avenue with having to transfer, et cetera. The people have to kind of walk a block or so to be able to transfer to another bus to take them down to Shore Road, et cetera. Why not make that B4 bus just go straight down 75th Street all the way down to Shore Road, make the left turn, and then come all the way up 78th Street at the way that it's coming up now. You drop the passengers off at 4th Avenue and Bay Ridge Parkway. They walk 2 blocks to the subway, and it eliminates, a lot of the problems of having to zigzag all around. Just a thought.
Yeah. The MTA is usually loath to eliminate the stops right in front of its subways, but again, that's a good answer. If the exit is actually quite close to Bay Ridge Parkway, the northernmost exit on the inbound side.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move to members of the public. Deborah Pepe Cantorino. Deborah, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for putting this all together. I just want to say that, I'm a commuter. I've been taking the X27 and X37 into Manhattan every day for like 10 years, and not just for work commuting in, but also leisurely on the weekends. And, if you guys can really advocate for those additional stops in Manhattan that they're trying to X out, and just be really appreciative, because for us to get home safe, late nights working, or, there is a really big chunk. I think it's between 23rd Street and then all the way to the financial district that they're really trying to cut. if there's any way that you can, because, you know, we don't then have a safe way to get home if we are working late or something. So if they're trying to make this commuter friendly, it needs to be kind of for all hours, because everyone's commuting schedule is so different.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, as someone who had to come home after midnight on a restaurant job in Manhattan, the fact that it really only focuses on rush hours is nuts. It's not a commuter line. I still don't commute on normal rush hours. I commute before there even is normal service on the subways. So yeah.
And I'm going to move
Is there
to
normal service on the subway?
That's a good point. No, there is not.
Especially on the R line?
I mean, I'm out at like I get the ones where the R train stops at South Ferry.
Okay, I'll move next to
White
the
House, White House.
Ivana Albanese Rizzo. Ivana, do
Yeah.
you have a question?
Yes, I'm confused. So is the 27X only going down to the financial district, and then we have no other way to get to Midtown except when the 37X runs? And the 37X won't be running all day. It'll be just doing the peak hours that it normally does?
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
that's it.
That's totally unacceptable then. And, you know, we've been through this over and over for many, many years, back to the Marty Golden days, that for some reason, they're always trying to take away our express bus. It's amazing to me, and we have to fight for this because people use it for everything. They use it for their doctor's appointments. They use it to go to the hospital. They use it for leisure. They use it for work. I mean, how could they do that? How could they eliminate going from Lower Manhattan to Midtown for all of those hours? That's just unacceptable. And I don't know how else we can advocate to absolutely, you know, nip this in the bud. But we have to do this.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Barbara Pollock.
Yeah, just adding on to the fact that we're a transportation desert, a lot of the buses are the only handicapped accessible transportation that we have in the neighborhood. And by cutting them, we're really creating more of a desert.
Yeah.
And disenfranchising a lot of residents from basic services.
Thank you.
Agreed. The MTA can't fall into this. Everyone in public transit knows that if you make public transit worse, less people will ride it, and then you will want to cut more public transit, and then you have none. That's not how public transit should be run. You should put stops where people aren't demanding it, so you create demand. It's ridiculous. If anything, there should be a massive change in improving accessibility at all of the stops along Shore Road. Make them more wheelchair accessible, get more people to want to use it, because that is a problem right now. That's the thing that I think limits the Express right now, is accessibility of the existing stops, not the fact that it goes too slow.
Right. Doris, so Dan is concluded, although covered all the lines, including the Dyker Heights. I do have lots of slides that really just picture some of the stops that were eliminated that I can share with board members given the hour.
I would just like to say one thing to Dan. Some years ago, the MTA, I was chair of the, at that point, I was chair of the T&T committee, and they were doing massive service changes. And I think I gave the longest committee report in the history of the board.
I hope I haven't eliminated your record.
Remember, they eliminated the 37 altogether.
That's right. They eliminated the 37 completely.
They put the 70 on 3rd Avenue, and it was like a paperclip.
Right.
So
then they restored the 37.
I'm happy to enter into the annals of this long-standing bus fiasco with Community Board 10. I hope to have more of them in the future.
Yeah, well, so the MTA's February workshop and presentation that you all have, is going to be, our February TNT, must attend. I think we should all do that. And then
Where will it
follow,
be?
I'm sorry.
Where will it be and when?
It's going to be via Zoom. And
Zoom?
let's see the date. Do I have that in front of me? I think it's the 9th or the 6th. What is
I
it?
think it's the 9th.
Yeah, February 9th. It's going to be at 6:30 to 8:30 via Zoom. I will send out the link again to all the board members, especially the Traffic and Transportation Committee. And then, the MTA is going to be visiting community districts through February. And comments, will prepare and probably vote as a body for the March general board meeting. So during the month of March, TNT typically reviews the street festivals, which don't take that long. So I think it'll be formulating comments to this plan, in a very formal way to the MTA. Certainly encouraging all residents who contact our office to also reach out to their elected officials, as well as attend the workshop to provide feedback. I tried the interactive map today on the MTA site and it wasn't working. So that was kind of disappointing.
It's
And
not very helpful anyway.
yeah. So I think, Doris, I'm going to send out my slides. There are several stops that were cut that make zero sense. Some that really, that I know Dyker Heights residents really rely upon, and maybe a map maker doesn't see that. I don't know if we should, regroup after the February MTA workshop, and maybe we could, divide up some areas that we could each look at that were highlighted here today, as we prepare, because it's going to be a lengthy report to the MTA. I could see that already. What do you think?
Regrouping after the February MTA meeting would be very helpful.
Mhm.
Agreed. Well, roll up our sleeves and get to work.
And I'll be updating this interactive map as well. I still have to add the actual foot distance between the previous and next stops. All of that will be on that little interactive map as well, so we can really dig into like how far people have to walk now and
Very,
all of that
very
stuff.
helpful, Dan.
So,
And I think the express bus riders, from those that are calling the office, are some are getting organized, because as those who spoke today and those that we're hearing from at the office are very concerned, and it's very impactful, those changes, for sure.
Now, Josephine, if I can ask, when do our written comments have to be in by?
I don't know if there's a deadline date, but I think that it should be sometime after, I have to look at the website, but after the conclusion of the workshops. And I think the last workshop, I can't pull it up here, I know goes well into February, if not March.
Last one they have on the sign up form is March 9th.
Yeah, so it would be soon after that. So by the March meeting, I'll double check that with the MTA if there's a deadline date to provide our responses by. But my timeline was the March meeting to submit comments. That's the third Monday in March. So we'll meet probably a few times before then.
So Josephine, will our comments be submitted by you, or do we have to submit them individually?
No, they will be voted upon by the board. The committee
Okay.
will formulate the recommendations in a motion to the MTA, and there'll be a very formal, our advisory response. And of course, we will encourage individual residents to reach out to the MTA individually. We could also do that individually as board members. But the board will, be preparing a formal advisory recommendation that's very specific.
I think there's no harm in doing both,
No.
personally and individually and as a board.
yeah, I will add that the Bronx draft plan was in June 2019, and they submitted their final in October of 2019. So pretty short
Pretty
distance
short
between
window.
the draft was published in December of 2022 for us. The Queens one took a little bit longer. It went from March 2022. And that hasn't been finalized yet, but we're probably looking at Queens and Brooklyn both probably finalizing within 2023.
Queens had to do a major redesign because they moved bus stops away from major subway hubs.
Mhm.
They said, we take the bus to the train, now we can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And the MTA went boom, 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 boom.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see. I think that we have a benefit as a CB where we will get to see the Queen's final plan before the Brooklyn final plan. Hopefully it'll be enough time where we can see how dramatically they don't listen. But maybe we can look back at the Bronx plan and see what some of the Bronx CBs that maybe have already gone through this, whether any of their input was really brought in.
Okay.
Will our comments be impactful? I always refer back to the Department of Transportation that seems to listen to our comments and do whatever they want to do anyway. And so I'm wondering whether our comments will have an impact. I hope that they will.
I mean, that's our role as a body for sure, Diane. And I do think that our elected officials, have a strong voice, certainly a strong voice as well. Our, state elected officials. I know there's an organized group on Facebook. I did see that specific to the express bus, urging commuters to contact the elected officials in the area. I mean, I, of course, always encourage that. I know there are elected reps on the call today. Stephanie Giovinco from Councilman Brannan's office is in the meeting room. So, and I know the elected officials do, of course, receive our recommendations and have always been supportive in the past. So I think as a collective voice, it's important to provide our feedback. I think residents individually, though, some are organizing already, specific to, I've seen the express bus service and all of those voices. This is a time where we have to be loud,
Yes.
about our concerns. Come together, absolutely.
Then don't forget the transit authority, the state agency, and we only have, go so far.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we have something that most other neighborhoods don't have right now, which is data. So that's the first thing you need to start organizing. So that's the next step.
Dan, your presentation was extremely helpful. Thank you for all that work.
Thank you. It's public transit is really one of my biggest passions. So
Where's that map in the background?
that's mine. I made that. I did an updated Vignelli 1970s map for all of the Bay Ridge bus lines because I'm a very big nerd.
You did a great job.
I'd be happy to print one out for you, Larry.
I
Could you
want one
print
printed
two?
and framed, Dan, okay?
I will. Community,
Can
all
we
the
all
board
have one?
members. Are there any ethics guidelines for me handing out free posters to everyone?
No.
Can
we
you
each
make
get
it as the
different
backdrop?
segments?
How is that invisible? I don't know. I'm not technologically astute by any means. How do you put that backdrop in back of you so that we all have it at our February 9th meeting?
It's a Zoom feature, Diane. I'll have to show you how to do it.
I can give everyone the graphic for their Zoom, so we can all show up to the MTA meeting with this as our background.
Yeah, no, Dan, can you give us like different segments and then we can coordinate like when we come in so that we
It's like a Brady Bunch full map. I love that, Danny.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for sticking around for so long as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing
Good
this.
night, everyone.
All right, good
everyone.
night.
Motion to adjourn.